It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the William and Penn's head women's bowling coach, Coach Kirsten Foster. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in collegiate bowling?
Yeah. So I would say coaching collegiate bowling isn't a lifelong dream. Like it wasn't something I knew I was going to do with my life. Um, it probably became more of it after I completed my schooling, came to William Penn, and just, I'm passionate about the school, passionate about the team. Even after leaving, we stayed invested in the team, helped recruiting, and then, years down the road, the opportunity presented itself to come back and take over the teams. And after speaking with my husband, who's now the men's head coach, we decided it was a good risk. And so we took the jump and moved back and haven't looked back since.
What was that experience like as a college athlete going to William and Penn and competing in bowling?
So as an athlete, it was fun, to be honest. When I was on the team was new. It had started in 2009. I joined the team in 2008 or 2010. So it was 1 year fresh. So it was fun. It was fun being part of a program that was young. It was building. So you kind of get this idea that you're setting the foundation of what this program could be, what it could become. So with that, it was really fun, and it was fun learning the different sides of bowling. Where I grew up, didn't have a high school team or anything like that, so I strictly competed on an individual level until I got to college, and then you learn the team aspect, which is completely different. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It is night and day difference, but it's more enjoyable. Uh, I enjoyed the team environment, enjoyed having, girls stand behind me, be, cheering me on, rooting me on, or vice versa, me rooting them on and getting excited for each other if one of us had a standout performance. And like I said, building that foundation. So it's memories I think back on that I use as like lessons for my team now, or, just kind of reminisce on the good memories we had too.
As a collegiate athlete, what was that experience like getting to compete for William and Penn?
It was, I mean, it was a good time. We we did well. I would, I'd be lying if I said we performed our best all the time. We did not. We were a team that we had quite a bit of talent, quite a bit of unknown talent. We were from all different parts of the country. Um, I think we let some of our personality differences get in the way at times. But when it mattered most, we came together as a team. So, with that, I kind of helped build some of those, long lasting memories that we have. One of my better friends now, she was on the team with me too, and she actually used to coach as well. So, so it was good, and it built lifelong friendships or relationships that I have now. Um, so I don't regret it by any means.
After your collegiate time, what was it like getting to bowl for Utah State?
Um, it was fun. It was different. So I grew up in the Midwest. Went to, grew up in Michigan, went to Iowa for college, and then moved to Utah, where it's completely different away from everyone that I know. Uh, so it was fun getting to know different people. I definitely went through some growing pains being there. I After college, I had this perception that I should be amazing and achieving all these things and whatnot. And I didn't. I went through a lull for like 2 years after college. And it was one of those things like me and my husband had a very serious sit down conversation about whether or not I was even going to continue bowling, because it got to the point that I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I was burnt out. I was frustrated that I wasn't performing to my expectations. And then after sitting down with my husband, meeting new friends, working with a new coach, I was able to kind of get over that hump, made some, major changes to my game, and grew and grew enough that I was able to make new friends there and was able to start bowling with more ladies that were more competitive and they helped keep me competitive because they would keep me on my toes, and they were always very encouraging, and became more than just friends on the lanes. They were just became friends in life in general. So really appreciate it because I think it was an experience that I needed in my life to become not only a better bowler, but a better person.
How was that experience like for you getting to be a part of the Great Salt Lake bowling program?
It was good. It was good. So for a while there, I was just, like a typical bowler, just kind of bowled leagues, would bowl some tournaments, dabble enough a little bit in it. But then once I got to know more people, I got involved in their association. So I became a board member. And specifically, I was in charge of the youth program. So with that, I was in charge of running like the youth tournaments, being on the committee to decide who's getting like scholarships and so forth, and trying to like revamp it. So I enjoyed it a lot because I think any sport can say it, the youth is the future, right? These are your up and coming stars. These are the kids that are going to be going to college to participate in these sport and maybe eventually go pro. So it was fun getting to know them and getting to meet them while they're still in their developmental phases as they're growing in the sport. And then it was nice to also try to help incorporate some change and to give them more scholarship money, get them more experience, get them experience that was actually beneficial. So bowling on sport shot versus bowling on house shot, those are different experiences. So you're trying to make sure you're always doing everything to help them grow and develop. And so I think it was something that I really enjoyed. And, I think if you look at it from like a psychological standpoint, they get really kind of started the bug about maybe coaching in the future.
What was that feeling like getting to come back home to William and Penn and become the head coach?
It was something we had never really considered before. And then when the opportunity presented itself, I think the best way I could describe it was like coming back home. Not that Utah was never home, but it's different. It was new. I didn't have family there. And then being able to come back to Iowa where I'm closer to family, and it's kind of where I take my bowling journey and I have like different chapters of life. And I felt like coming to William Penn is where my chapter of taking it more seriously really started. And so being able to come back here where that chapter started, and it was calming in a weird sense. It was nice knowing that, we already had roots here, things were already established. We got to move our kids back here where they could, they don't understand it yet because they're still young, but they get to see what it was like being around the team and see, where their mom and dad met. And so it was bittersweet. It was, sad that I had to leave my friends in Utah, but it was, I enjoy being back here, enjoy being back in this atmosphere and being around the teams again.
What was that feeling like for you getting to become the head coach at your alma mater of William and Penn?
It was surreal, for lack of a better term, because it's, looking back on it, William Penn is one that's known for hiring their alumni to come back and coach their teams. And, like I'll be honest with it, there was times where I honestly felt like the only reason why I was even a candidate is because of my husband. He's the most decorated alumni this school has. So for me, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, maybe they were really reaching out for him. But there's other things that I bring to the table as well, even though I'm not as decorated as what he is. I'm one of the few alumni that I've stuck with the sport since graduating. So I've, had a chance to learn and grow more in the sport, get different experiences. We've gotten experience in international waters and meeting new faces and getting to learn from some of the more bigger professionals in the sport. And so being able to come back here and bring that knowledge with and pass that on to some of the players it's really rewarding, actually.
What was that experience like for you, as you said, getting that experience going internationally and having that international bowling experience?
It was fun. There was times it was chaotic. There was one time we were traveling to Canada, and so when you're flying international, you have to show up at the airport and have your bags checked in before a certain time frame. And Salt Lake Airport. It's not the biggest airport. The parking lot is big enough though that you could be sitting there waiting for a shuttle for some time. And by the time the shuttle got us with our equipment and we got to the TSA agent, we had missed that deadline by 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So they were telling us, like, you can board the flight, but you can't check your bags. Well, the only reason why we were going to Canada was to bowl these tournaments. And so we made the decision to pack everything back up in the car, and we drove to Canada to bowl the tournament. And one of the craziest things I think we've ever done, because it was a spur of the moment, it was a whim. Thankfully we didn't lose money. My his dad worked for the airlines, so we were already traveling on a buddy pass, so we were able to get that money back. But it was, I mean, we're talking like a 14-hour drive at that point. So we literally got back in the car and we drove straight north to Canada. Ended up paying off because my husband Cameron, he actually came out with the win. So I was like, good thing we drove. But it was an adventure, to say the least. And I feel like every time we travel, there's always something always happens. We had one trip where I actually got food poisoning in the middle of the tournament, so I didn't even get to finish. But I think the biggest part that I really enjoy about those tournaments is when you get to compete and you get to see all these different talents and these different competitors, but you get to meet new people and you make new friends. And some of those people, like, sometimes you just go to these tournaments, you meet this person once and you never think of them again, but these are people that I could call them right now on my phone and I could ask them questions. Like, I've got friends up there that I know I could call them any time of the day and they would pick up the phone and they would answer, and we can talk about anything other than just bowling. So yeah, we got the international experience, got to see different talent. But you also get new friendships out of that. And I think, it's a beautiful thing.
What was that experience like, getting to coach internationally and getting to take your team internationally to go to Canada to go to these tournaments?
Yeah, so I will say I haven't gotten to coach internationally yet. That was a personal trip that turned into a fiasco, but so we haven't had a chance to do international yet, but you never know. You never know what the cards hold in the future, so maybe. I will say we've had some international players on the team. Currently my GA, one of my assistant coaches, she's from Puerto Rico. It's not quite international, but she's competed internationally as well. She's on Team Puerto Rico. And then on the men's side, we have a gentleman that's from Team Ireland. So haven't gotten to coach in international terms, but we've had international players here that we've gotten to coach. And so kind of getting to pick their brain and how things happen in all those different countries is definitely interesting. It's interesting to see how they tackle things differently in different areas of the world. So it's always nice getting some of those players, because not only, most of the time when you think about coaching is these players are learning from you, but one thing we'll always say is I truly believe we learn more from the players than they learn from us. We just help them put the pieces together.
What does a typical game day look like for a bowling match at William and Penn?
So on a game day, most of ours are tournaments that last over 2 days. Typically day one is you're bowling individual games. So you bring a roster of 8, but only 5 bowl at a time. So you got to figure out, which 5 do you think are going to give you the best scores? So you put those 5 in, and then you can sub people in and out. But then over the course of the day, they bowl 5, maybe 6 games. And then, you look to see where you're at. And then you come into day 2, and then you bowl Baker games. And what those are is it's 5 people bowling 1 game. So you have a bowler that will bowl the 5th and the 6th frame. Someone will bowl the 2nd and 7th frame, 3rd and 8th, 4th and 9th, 5th and 10th. And so same thing, you're trying to figure out which 5 bowlers in which order are going to give you the best outcome. And so sometimes it's, you come out of practice and it seems very cut and dry. You got 5 girls that look like they have this phenomenal look and they're attacking the pattern right. And then there's other days where you're like, okay, who's going to stay out of trouble the best? So it's there's like a formula to it, but there's not an actual formula. There's a science. You just gotta guess right, essentially, for lack of a better term. But there's different aspects of it too. You're trying to figure out which players fit best where. Each position has a different role, and with that comes different energy levels, different mental games, different pressure levels, and you got to figure out who's gonna fit each role the best. Because whoever fits that role the best, it's a trickle effect into the next role and into the next role and into the next role. And so that's where the misconception is about bowling, is a lot of people don't understand how it can be a team event, but when you're bowling Bakers like that, it's very much so a team event. You can have the 5 best bowlers, but if you don't have them in the right order, it can be catastrophic. So it's always fun. We have some bowlers that are used to certain spots in the lineup, and then I'll change it up on them just to kind of keep them on their toes, and then they'll look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, just run with it and we'll see how it goes.
Of course, as a bowling coach, what is it like getting to coach the different styles of bowling, like Red Robin and Baker's side?
Yeah, so it's your coaching tactic changes. So when you're bowling those individual games, you could be a little bit more patient if you wanted to. But one of the things I've learned so far with bowling is that, there's always a gamble. You got to take those big risks. You got to make those risky changes and hope they pay off. And, for the most part, as long as it's a calculated risk, they have a calculated payoff and they work out really well. But then like learning the different styles of each game, each bowler that comes to the team, they each have their own way of how they throw the ball, own way of how they register information, and own way about how they analyze that information, and then how they regurgitate that information. So not only, like as a coach, not only are you trying to learn their style of games and figure out what equipment's going to work best for them and what patterns work best for them and what's the best way you can coach them, but you also have to learn their personalities and figure out how can I, as a coach, adapt to their learning style and make it so that they can benefit from me the most. And so it's, there's some days where I'm like, oh, this is a piece of cake. But then there's other days where I'm like, we are 100% not on the same page. We all need to stop and figure out why we're not on the same page. And sometimes that's just what it takes. You take a pause. One of the things the girls laugh at me because they know it, is they'll come and ask me a question, and if I'm not ready to answer, I'll just be like, stand by, just wait. And then they're like, okay. And then they'll wait, and then I'll try to get some more information before I give them my answer. But it's fun learning the different styles, and this is where I always tell the girls, like, as much as they think they're learning a ton from me, I learn more from them. Like I always reiterate to them that they know more than what they think they do. They just need to trust themselves. Trust yourself, and you're going to be that much better along the way.
For my listeners that don't know, how do you compete in collegiate bowling?
I think I don't know. We always change things up. I know a lot of the coaches out there, they have, I won't necessarily say set lineups, but they have, they have their set people. Like this person's always bowling the 5th and 10th frame. This person always bowls 1st and 6th. They have people that are set for those spots. And I would say I don't have a problem changing things up. I don't always start the same 5 girls. I don't always start them in the same spots. Tournament to tournament, I'm not even always bringing the same roster. I will change it up because I'm always looking to see who is performing the best at that time. And if someone has the hot hand, I want to take advantage of that. And I want to put them in the position that's going to make the most sense to take advantage of that. And so I'll change things up. And I think when I first took over the team, there was some adapting that needed to be done on both sides, because I was all for like, nope, we're doing this. And, the girls were used to a different way of coaching. And so it was like, well, let's meet in the middle. And then so we met in the middle, and now that they've understand like what my thought process is, now we just kind of, we kind of gradually work that way. And now they're more understanding. And I think the best way that I did it was that I told the girls, like, if I ever make a decision that you guys don't understand, don't be afraid to ask me. Because maybe I'm thinking this in my head and the logic makes sense in my head, but then once I spew it out, maybe that logic makes 0 sense and it's not logic at all. So I'm like, don't be afraid to ask me questions, because I want you guys to understand what I'm doing as well. Because then if you're not asking questions, then you're just getting frustrated, and that creates a miscommunication, and that ultimately leads to failure. I don't like to fail. So don't be afraid to ask me questions. I'm not taking it as you questioning me. It's just you trying to get better understanding. And so now and they'll do that. We'll be at a tournament and I'm like, okay, I want everyone to start with this ball. And they're like, why? That doesn't even make sense. I'm like, well, because I think this is what the pattern calls. And then on the flip side, I also will tell them when I'm wrong. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That wasn't the best call. Let's go back. Let's try this again and go from there.
Since being head coach of the women's bowling program, what have been some of your biggest accomplishments?
Since taking over, that's a good question. Okay, so we've got a couple. So I would say probably the first one that came to my mind, performance-wise, was my first year as a coach. The women took 3rd place at NAIA Nationals. And it was, and the reason why I'm going to say that one was probably one of the best ones that comes to mind, is because that year you have a new coach. You got new players. The coach sees things differently. Our communication styles were different. There was a lot of hurdles, a lot of barriers that we had to get through to even get there, to even get to that spot. And so it wasn't just the 3rd place finish itself. It was everything that led up to that point. It was all the work that the girls put in. Not just on the lanes, off the lanes as well. I'm a big believer in team culture and team chemistry, and that if you can either have 8 players with the 8 best talent, or you can have 8 players with fantastic team chemistry. And I will take the fantastic team chemistry any day of the week, because chances are their team chemistry is so good that they're going to become better bowlers because of that, because they know they've got other girls standing behind them rooting them on. So I won't necessarily take my 8 top performers. I will take my 8 that get along the best and that are good teammates. And it took a second for the girls to wrap their head around that, because that wasn't how it always used to be. And that was one of the bigger barriers. And the other barriers was that I'm going to be real. When you're coaching a girls team, there's drama. There's always drama. There's always someone mad at someone because someone said something the wrong way, they used the wrong tone, they used the wrong word, whatever it may be. And I just told them, I was like, no, that's not okay. If you have a problem with someone, you have to talk it out with them and figure out, maybe it's a whole thing's a miscommunication. Maybe this is a real conflict. Either way, it needs to be addressed, and we need to figure this out. And it finally clicked. It finally clicked in postseason. We had just missed winning conference, which on the NEI side, if you win your conference, you get an automatic bid at nationals. And we barely missed it. We went down to Baker. They shot 275 at us their last game, which I was like, I don't know how we beat that. That's just good for you guys, right? So then we're sitting there and we're waiting to see if we get an at-large bid, and then we get the at-large bid. And then we go to sectionals, where the girls bowled amazing. They went plus, but it wasn't enough. So we didn't make it to USBC nationals. So then our last hurrah was NAIA nationals. And they were one of those teams that they enjoyed being the underdog. They enjoyed not having anything to lose. So, we go to NAIA nationals, and you bowl 24 Baker games of qualifying. There's 12 teams there. After qualifying was done, we were seeded 12th. And the funny part was after being seeded 12th, I was not concerned at all. I was like, okay, we've been in this spot how many times this year? How many times have we snuck into match play as the 8th seed and ran the ladder? This is where you guys like to be. You love this spot. You love having the chip on your shoulder and running with it. Just do it again. It's just another day. And plus the beginning of the day, they were actually one of the better teams. It just, as the day progressed, it went downhill. So, we go into the next day and we just did our thing. Our first match was beat Bull Pikeville. And it was a high scoring match. We were barely beating them. We were shooting 240s. They were shooting 230s. It was a very close match, and almost every game it came down to the 10th frame. And and I would say it was a team effort. Everybody did their part when they needed to. And then during that, we took down, we took down Pikeville. We took down Kansas Wesleyan, who had performed really well for qualifying. The biggest takedown was we took down SCAD Savannah, who I believe was seeded number 1. They ended up winning the national title that year, but we sent them to the losers bracket. And it was one of those things. It was one of those calls. It's probably like the riskiest call I have ever made in my coaching career. Most of the time when it comes to bowling on the women's side, if you make your spares, you're fine. But when you're bowling against a team like SCAD, you need to be throwing strikes. And I had a girl, she wasn't throwing the ball bad. She just wasn't striking. She was sparing. And she was my 8th bowler. So I, come up to the game, you have your 8th, 9th, and 10th frame. And she was bowling the 8th frame. And I had another coach came and suggested, let's sub her out and put this person in, because if this person strikes, then the 9th bowler is going to strike, and then the 10th bowler can strike out. And I was like, I'm literally pulling someone for doing their job. And she was like, I know, but this could pay off, and then we could win the match. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And sure enough, the girl that we put in, she struck, 9th frame struck, anchor struck out to beat SCAD by 1 pin to win the match. It was the most terrifying but exhilarating moment of my coaching career. And it was exciting to see the excitement on the girls' faces, and to see that everything, all the hurdles that they came over, all the barriers that they came over this year paid off in that moment. Because once they beat SCAD, we were now guaranteed to make it to the next day. And then we would either go into the next day as the 1st or 2nd seed for the day, like guaranteed to take 2nd or 3rd for the tournament. And so it was awesome to see all of that work pay off for them, and see that everything that they did, all the sacrifices they made that season, led to that moment. And it was so gratifying. And then, I firmly believe I get more nervous as a coach than I ever did as a player. It is, I am like, there's times where we're in those matches, I'm like in the back pacing, walking back and forth, because I'm like, oh my gosh, just post a shot. It'll be fine. But it's awesome. It's awesome to see, and it's awesome to see their excitement. But then with that, like the other exciting thing that I love about this program is everything that they have put forth to building the team culture that we currently have. Because that required changes. It required changes from everybody. It required for them to give up who they are to try to be who they could be, to be what's better for the team. And so I would say, as a coach, those are probably the two biggest successes that I would count, performance wise and just team wise, because team culture is everything. And if the team culture is not right, then your team's not going to perform. And these girls have proven it time and time again. And so it's really rewarding, and I love seeing it. And I mean, it still gets brought up in conversation. We talked about it yesterday at practice, because my current GA bowled for SCAD that year when we sent them to the losers bracket. So I got brought up at practice. So it's really fun. They all joke about it now, but it's fun. And it's something like that is built a relationship, because that moment is when my current GA knew she wanted to come here and help coach.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've started to build for the program?
Yeah. So, and I would say the culture that we started to build actually started with the previous coach. The previous coach was big on team culture, big on mental game. And so he started it. I feel he created the foundation, and then I just added on to it. My biggest thing is I'm not necessarily looking for the top talent. I am looking for girls that are ready to come in and be a good teammate, and I will help your talent get there. And he had the same idea. The only thing I changed is I wanted the girls to take ownership. And what I mean by that is that, yeah, don't get me wrong, I lead the team in a sense that I'm a coach. I'm here every year. I'm here every practice. I'm the one figure that's not going to change. But it's not my team. It's their team, and it's their culture, and that culture is going to change every year, every tournament, every day. It changes, it evolves, it morphs, and it can't, like, I can plant the seed, but I'm not the one that's going to make it grow. That's them. And I think that's the part that was missing before. So with the team culture before, it was the previous coach's team culture. There was no ownership from the players. It was just, oh, we're doing this because he wants us to. And, not really, but there was no buy-in to it, even though his ideas were great. And so when I took over, I kept what he was doing. I made some slight changes, just so that it was fit me a little bit better. But I pitched it differently to them, because I wanted them to buy in. I wanted them to take ownership. And so once they started taking ownership, that's when it grew even more. And that's when it became a real thing. One of the best aspects I could say is the previous coach would do a book study with the girls, and they always would do books about, either team culture, being good teammates, mental game, anything like that. When I first took over, that was the first thing they asked, is like, can we stop doing the book studies? I don't want to do them anymore. And I was like, okay, not going to make you do something you don't want to do. Kind of. They still do workouts, even though they don't want to do them. But I was like, sure, we don't have to do them. So that first year we didn't do book studies because they didn't want to. And then, but we started implementing other ideas. We started talking about, we keep the drama outside the bowling alley. You guys are not always going to get along. I am fully aware of that. But you guys need to make an effort to be teammates. Being friends, being teammates, not the same thing. And I'm okay with that. So implementing those ideas. And then come the second season. And I had a girl that was like, can we bring back the book studies? I was like, okay, why did you guys want to get rid of them to begin with? And she was like, well, I wasn't a fan of the books. Like, one book was good, but this other book was really boring. And so I was like, okay, so I guess if we bring back the book study, how would you like it to change? And she was like, well, can we have a say? Can we have a say in the book that we pick? And I was like, well, yeah, because if we're going to sit here and we're going to scope out books for our book study and figure out which one we're going to read, I do not have that much time to peruse 20 to 30 different books and then narrow it down to one. I need your guys' help to peruse and pick a book. And they did. Actually, they came back with like 3 different suggestions. I put the suggestions to the team. They voted on it. We ended up reading the Energy Bus, and and that was our book. And it was one of those things, like, so we still did the same activity that the previous coach started. The only difference was that the girls took ownership of it. It became theirs. And when it became theirs, that's when it meant more. There was more meaning behind it. They were more willing to apply it to not only to the team, but their lives in general. And so we read the Energy Bus, and that ended up becoming our running joke for the season. So one of the talks about the Energy Bus is like, you want positive people on your bus and you want to get rid of the negative people. And, if they don't want to be on your bus, then don't let them hang around. And during one of our book talks, one of our girls was trying to like do a hand motion that she was like honking the horn of the bus, and she went like this instead, as if it was like a semi or something. I don't know. So that was the running joke for the rest of the year. So like you could go back and watch our live stream, and if you see us in the group doing this, that's talking about our energy and how we need to do better with our energy, and we need to, get back on that track. And so it was one of those things that once they took ownership, that's when it meant something. And that's when it became more real, more permanent. And you got buy-in from the team a little bit better. They, and now a lot of our conversations is about, okay, yeah, we might not have performed well. Where were we at energy wise? Were we being the best teammates that we could? Okay, well, let's do better next time. When you're a better teammate, your chances are you're probably going to perform better too, because you're more excited and you're more apt to be there.
Of course, what is that home game atmosphere like when those teams come to your home bowling alley?
It's fun. So last year we hosted conference. It goes around, each team in our conference gets to host. So last year was our turn to host. And it was really enjoyable. One thing that our school likes to do is we pick an event for each sport, and we try to pack the stadium, the court, the field, bowling alley, whatever their arena is. We try to pack it to break attendance records. And so that was one of the things that we were trying to do. And it was fun. It was loud. It was exciting. You could just feel the energy buzz through it, because it was filled with a bunch of parents and spectators. And, we had our own, we had some of our own athletic staff that were there, because they were like, oh, we can go watch bowling, because we don't get to host home events very often. We have a home center. The school owns it. But it's a good practice facility. It's not always big enough to host an event. So it was fun to be able to host, and it was nice because we had to be on our home turf. We didn't have to take a bus somewhere. We could just drive in the morning, go get our own coffee. So it was fun. It was different. I think it was, we still had to go different means to get into our normal mental headspace for the day. Because I think sometimes if you are on your own home lanes, it's easy to get lackadaisical with how you prepare yourself for it. So we told the girls that, okay, you guys still have to be here by this time. We're going to do our warm-ups at this time. So we still had to have structure. It wasn't as, there wasn't as much flexibility there, because we still wanted to try to replicate it as if we were doing any other tournament. But the girls enjoyed it more. It was nice to being able to perform that well in front of a home crowd. We had more parents show up too. So I think it's always fun when you get to bowl in front of your parents, and they can kind of see like all the work you've put in, see the improvements that you've made. It's kind of nice to show off every now and then.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to go into collegiate bowling?
So there's a lot of different ways players can get recruited. Now I will say there are so many youth bowlers out there. And one thing I would strongly encourage is that get your name out there. There's so many bowlers all over the country, and there's not every region of the country has a school that offers collegiate bowling. Get your name out there. Create a social media page. Don't be afraid to contact coaches, because it might not be that you're not the right talent. It might just be we just haven't seen you yet, but we would still love for you to be part of our program. And so so with that, like how the recruitment process works here, we have a questionnaire that we'll ask recruits to fill out. It gives us their contact information so we can reach out to them, get to know them a little bit better. Because the first thing I want to make sure is that, do we have their major, right? You're going to school to get a degree. I want to help you get that degree. bowling's just a part of it. So, I always want to make sure that when we're getting these recruits that we offer what they're looking for education wise, just in the university itself. What they're looking for in a coach, does it line up with my coaching philosophy and my coaching style? And it's, what works for one player doesn't work for another. What works for one coach doesn't work for another. So, so I always want to make sure that we check off those boxes, because I want to make sure that we are the best, healthiest option for these recruits. And then we'll go through like the application process, and we stay in contact. I've got recruits I talk to like a few times a week. Heck, there's some recruits I'm talking to every day. We're just texting. And sometimes it's not even talking about bowling. I'm like, what else do you got going on in your life? I have a few recruits that they play softball as well. So I'll ask them how their softball season's going. What's going on there? Are you doing indoor softball? Especially now that winter's coming around. So it's more than just talking bowling. I want to get to know them and see, because then I want to show them that I care more about them than just their bowling talent and what they bring to the table. I care about them as a person, and make sure I help them develop them into who they could be and prepare them for the real world, because it's not easy making it as a professional bowler. So majority of the time they don't go professional. So want to make sure we're also giving them the tools to prepare for the real world and what that looks like.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing your freshmen put on that William Penn bowling uniform for the first time versus your seniors putting it on for the last time?
Oh man, those are two completely different feelings. Seeing the freshmen put it on the first time, it's exciting, it's rewarding. It's, you look at them and you see, this is just the start. This is the start of what could be a great career. You see the potential, and then you hope that you're doing everything that you can to help them achieve that potential. And that you're helping them become the best bowler they could possibly be. So there's newness. There's always excitement when there's newness. On the flip side, when you see your seniors put that jersey on for the last time, it's rewarding, because you think back on it and you think about like, oh man, I remember when they put it on for the first time, like, and then you see, you compare it to that time to how they are now, and it's bittersweet. It's sad. I'm not gonna lie. Last year when our run ended at NAI Nationals, and that was it for a few of my seniors, I cried. Like, I got them all in the huddle and I was like crying. I was like, I'm sorry it ended this way, and I wanted so much more for you guys, but thank you. And and it was really sentimental for me. I had one of the girls, she actually she came from Utah. I helped to recruit her to William Penn before I was even the coach. So I saw her as a youth bowler. I saw her grow and evolve, and then it was fun, being able to coach her a little bit on the collegiate side. And so it was, for me, some of these girls, it's like, when they take it off and you see them at graduation, there's a chance that might be the last time I ever see them, unless they have a big life event and I somehow get invited, so there's always the sentimental side. But it's still rewarding, I know, like, I already know this year when those group of seniors, that last tournament, I'm gonna cry again. I'm so gonna cry again, because this is the group that really took it to heart about the team culture. This is the group that kind of helped build the team to what it is today, and that team culture. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't kind of scared to see what next year looks like. And I'm not saying that other people aren't going to step up, because that's not it. It's just change. It's change. This is my biggest graduating class that I've had to deal with. The past couple years, I've had 2 or 3. This year I have 6, and all 6 have made a huge impact on not just the program, but me as a coach. And so, yeah, I'll be sad. I'm gonna cry. I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it. I'm not ready to think about that. So we still got a lot of season left. And so I know their goal is to go out this season with a bang. And they've got some unfinished business that they're looking to wrap up.
What are some of your future plans for the program moving forward?
Uh, Well, future plans, obviously, I would, I'm sure every coach would say this. I want a title. I want a national title. That would be nice. So I think it just created that itch because we were so close a couple years ago. So I would like that. I would like the team to make ITC nationals. Go there, get a couple wins under the belt, and I really the biggest goal is I want to continue to see the program grow. Not just in numbers, but as like individuals as well. I think that's one of the things that's the most rewarding about this is it's not the accolades that you get at the end of it. It's watching these young athletes, these young ladies grow and learn and become the young adults that they are now, and then seeing them go out into the real world and seeing how they tackle it. And it's rewarding. And then it's always rewarding when they come back and they talk to you and they're, they try to keep in touch with you because you formed this meaningful relationship with them that they treasure. And so for me, that's probably the most rewarding part, and I want to continue to grow that. And that's never going to change, because that's always a goal because you're always adding new people. So there's new people to form those bonds with. And then, just obviously, want to make William Penn a bigger name in the bowling world. I would say it's a decent name now. I would like it to be bigger. I would like it to be where, because there's times now where you talk to recruits and they're like, William Penn, where is that at? We get asked a lot if we're from Pennsylvania, which makes sense. I would like that question to not be so frequent because I want people to know us and know where we're at. So, it seems so small, but it's a big picture thing. And that's, it's kind of one of the goals, and continue to build the team culture that we've got going because there's always room for improvement and it can always be better.
What advice would you give those high school athletes out there that are looking to become college bowlers?
Enjoy the process. Enjoy the process it takes to get there. And just because your journey doesn't look the same as someone else's doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. Most kids, they come to college because they bowled on a high school team. They bowled on some team. Just because your high school doesn't have a team doesn't mean you can't bowl collegiately. I came to college not having any sport shot experience, didn't have any team experience, moved 7 hours away from home. And it was one of the most rewarding things that I could have ever have dreamed of. And I almost didn't do it. I almost said, nah, it's not for me. I never regret that decision. So just because your journey looks different doesn't mean it's not worthwhile, and does not mean it could not be as successful as someone else's. The journey is what makes the reward worthwhile. It's what makes it worth it. So don't give up on the journey, even if it seems hard. Even if you're coming across your senior year and you haven't heard from a coach yet, reach out. That can make all the difference. I never heard anything from any collegiate coach my senior year. I actually went to school somewhere else for college, and my freshman year is when I heard about William Penn and came to visit the coach. They didn't reach out to me. I reached out to them. And that's how my journey started. And I was part of a program that was building, and we got our, my sophomore year, we made it to nationals for the first time in program history. We won our first tournament. We won back-to-back conference titles. met my husband, met, one of my best friends nowadays. And none of that would have happened had I not reached out to the coach.
What advice
Yeah.
what advice out there would you give those future college athletes out there that are both looking to go, whether it's professionally or getting into coaching?
So if you're gonna go professional, practice, 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 practice. Do not underestimate spares and be patient. It is not easy making it on the tour. There's a lot of big name athletes out there, and don't let their names and their stardom or anything like that, don't let that phase you. You're out there for a reason. Trust the process. Trust everything that you've worked on up until that point and make it worthwhile. There will be setbacks. Hands down, there will be setbacks. Just think of it as another hurdle you got to jump. And then when you finally achieve what you're looking for, it's going to mean that much more to you. For those looking to get into coaching, you got to take your shot wherever it may be. And sometimes you might need to broaden your horizon. Sometimes you might need to look in an area you never thought of considered looking. Just know that you always have to be open to, I would say you always have to be open to criticism, because it's going to come no matter what. You're always going to get those people that said, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. That happens in any sport, anywhere. But it's very rewarding. I would say if anyone's looking to get into coaching, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. But if you're doing it for the right reasons, you'll love it.
What advice would you give those future head coaches out there looking to build their own women's bowling program or even bowling program in general?
The other thing is, I would say be patient. I will say recruiting on the women's side is a little difficult because there is just a ton of women's programs out there. Women's bowling is sanctioned on the NCAA side, but men's bowling is not. So there are significantly more institutions that offer a scholarship for women's bowling than there is men's bowling. And historically speaking, there is typically less female bowlers than there are men. So be patient. And, if you're looking to build a program, you got to trust your players too, because you're not building it by yourself. Those players are helping you build it too. They're the ones setting the groundwork and setting the foundation. Help them build it, help them set that foundation, but let them know that they're a part of the process too, and that you're there for them, and know that there's going to be times that they're not going to tell you things they don't want to tell you, they don't want to talk to you. They'll come around, they'll come and talk to you. I still have girls that are like, oh, you're just my coach, whatnot, blah blah blah. They'll come around. I can't tell you how many girls now they'll come to me for advice about life and whatnot. And I've talked to them about finances. That's where my background is in finances, and they've actually come to me about financial advice about things, relationship advice. What are they going to do with their lives after college? That kind of thing. And give it time, be patient. It will happen. It will come around. Just trust. The same thing. It's trust the process. It's a process for a reason. It's not going to happen overnight, but you'll get there.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find the bowling program at on social media?
So we have a Facebook and Instagram page. Our Facebook page is William Penn Women's Bowling. And then our Instagram page is WP_Women's Bowling. The Instagram page is new. I actually had to learn how to use Instagram because I didn't even have my own Instagram. So thankfully, my graduate assistant got it going for me. She makes most of the posts, but you can always find us there. We live stream every tournament that we can. Now, I will say, for those that know bowling, Bowl TV is a big live streamer, and they've actually been live streaming a lot of our events. So if they are live streaming, we are not able to, but then we'll advertise that on our social media pages. So, but we typically will live stream ourselves. And actually, we have a tournament this weekend, and I'm pretty sure we can live stream it ourselves. So, and we'll typically post that on one of those pages, if not both.
Thank you again, Coach Kirsten Foster, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the William Penn's women's bowling program.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me on here. It was fun.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Kirsten Foster, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.